All right, this will be a side-by-side comparison of the Pro 311 black hood that covers the motor and that sort of thing. As you can see, it's got a pretty thin ABS skin on it. And you can kind of see that it really moves quite easily. Over here is the PulseRam head shroud. And one of the differences here is this has got a sound deadening chamber. This is going to be filled up with foam once it goes on the vacuum. And so this machine here will be a lot quieter than this one. This one has no sound deadening foam that'll be inside here. So this one will actually run louder than this one. Another thing to point out is the thickness of the skin is 150 thousandths, whereas the Pro 311 skin is about 100 thousandths. So it's about another 50% more thicker the skin is over here. So it's a lot more rigid.
All right, here we go. We're forming the big unit.
Good?
Okay. This is a large black ABS cover.
Dueling cameras.
And that's the exhaust, that crosshatch thing that you see over there. That's the that's an exhaust. That's actually a very interesting pattern.
Yeah.
So I've got one of the valve bodies of the Pro 311 out, and one of the things that I notice here on it is there's no gasket that comes around this mating surface that comes around, that goes into here. So this basically just slides in here, but there's no gasket around the spot right here all the way around. None whatsoever. And as you can see, pretty much just Molex connectors, the least expensive kind that you can ever put on a wiring harness. Wires coming in are 14 gauge. So it's 14 gauge all the way up to the circuit board and the switch. It's an interesting design. But it looks kind of hard to work on if you had to work on it. One other thing that I've noticed, in addition to if you barely touch this wire, the grommet falls out. If you were ever to try to do a solenoid replacement, it's impossible for you to get the new wire through this tiny little hole when you still have that Molex connector on the end. So I'm not sure how a solenoid replacement is even possible with this configuration at this time. You'd probably have to cut this, somehow get the wire to go through here, strip them, crimp them, put something back on here. These Molex connectors are not designed for multiple insertions and deinsertions. They're only good for a few times. So this looks like this would be very difficult to work on if you were going to do a solenoid replacement, in my opinion. Yeah, you can see the whole solenoid actually tilts down when it moves. It's like the alignment isn't straight. Yeah, it's weird. Kind of weird. Yeah, it's just, and these solenoids are so weak. God, there's nothing crisp about them at all. And it's that crispness that you need. You really need to shock the filter hard with an instant burst of air. This is a sluggish solenoid. The other thing too, the solenoids are popping every 7 seconds. That'll be kind of difficult for it to keep dust off the filters if you're under heavy dust producing activities like grinding thin set. I also see the valve housing where the rubber valves, they actually bounce. They don't really snap closed really tightly. It just bounces. The whole system's really weak. Okay, one of the things I'm noticing about these solenoids is they're weak. And when the valves go to close, the solenoid bodies are also moving. So it's losing a lot of the snap that it could be getting. So here's what the PulseRam head looks like once you take the black dome off. You can readily see that this is constructed quite well, very heavy duty. Some of the things to point out, these access plates right here and here, if you just take those screws off there, it reveals the valve piston bolt where you would do valve adjustments, so those are very easy to do. It's not necessary to pull all of these tubes and manifolds off to do a valve adjustment. Again, you can see that the wire harnesses are automotive grade Deutsch connectors. These are designed to be inserted and deinserted numerous times compared to the Molex connectors, which after just a few insertions and deinsertions, they begin to lose good contact and it causes arcing. And for those of you that have previous Pulse-Bac 1250s, the 1150s, and the 1050s, if you've had them for a little while, they're notorious for turning brown and even sometimes burning and melting. This is very professional made dome with very, very thick sound deadening foam, which fits exactly up inside of there. That's why you see these imprints right here, because they go up inside of this dome, capture all that there. So it's got a nice seal on that. And again, this is the part that has the patent. It's an air recapturing adapter where we basically are harvesting pressurized moving air from the motor to add an additional pop to the filters right here. So that's what we have going on there. This is the inner working of the solenoid housing, and you can see that we have aluminum valves in here, and the throw has been set up to be significantly increased to capture even a bigger pulse of air to clean those filters. Very simple to work on. There's O-rings on every surface, top and bottom. So when this is installed, you don't have to use messy or gooey silicone that you have to come back later with a knife and try to cut it. It's very easy to work on and very quick to do repairs when they're needed, or even valve adjustments. The valves are lifetime aluminum valves. They wick away the heat. They are not designed to melt like those of the competitors. So this is what you have here that you can't quite see when the motor's on. Here's the part that's the 3D printed air recapturing adapter that has been designed to fit on that motor, and it will harvest pressurized moving air through that hole right there and direct it to the various solenoids, so that when the solenoids function, it gets an even larger compressed pop of air. This means that the PulseRam vacuum is specifically designed for the rigors of dust-free tile removal, because when you are grinding thin set, pulling up saltillo and other incredibly dusty things, your filters will be subjected to larger than normal amounts of dust. And even though you may have HEPA filters in there, they only work as good as they can work if they're kept clean. You can throw larger amounts of dust at your vacuum, or at this vacuum, than you could at a competitor's, which means you'll have higher CFM and increased ability to capture those dust molecules before they have a chance to float away. And here you can see this is a full set of PulseRam automotive grade connectors, wire harnesses with the Deutsch connectors that goes into one of the PulseRam heads. And by the way, these are all backward compatible with any Pulse-Bac 1000 series vacuums. So if you have a Pulse-Bac 1000, 1150, or a 1250, and you're tired of your wires being burned, melting, or catching fire, this is your solution right here. These wire harnesses from DustRam. Okay, so what you have here is a picture of a Pulse-Bac 1250, and you can see the wires, how burnt these have become right through here. Here's another area here that's been burnt, and all the insulation is gone. Wires have come over here. These are all burnt and discolored, burned up the circuit board. And so this is my point about these Molex connectors. These were never designed for long-term use. They're also horrible for keeping moisture out. And once you get any kind of corrosion started with these things, you'll get arcing, which causes huge amounts of voltage spikes, which will cause this stuff to burn, cause problems, blowing fuses, taking out circuit boards, that sort of thing right there. So here are a few things that are interesting about the Pro series and the Pulse-Bac 1000 series. These are the filter plates that you see in through here, and they've got cracks. They've developed cracks, and the dust comes in through these cracks and can contaminate the inner part of the vacuum. And it doesn't matter which of these that you have, it will do this every single time, whether you have the black ones or the blue ones. So we do have a permanent fix for that. DustRam has 3D printed filter plates that will fix all of these problems right here. This is what the setup looks like once you have the PulseRam head mounted on top of the 29.5-inch tall tank. So these are nylon 3D printed handles. These are set up to where you can take a 50-foot extension cord and wrap around, and the extension cord fills up the sides over here, so you can contain an extension cord in one spot. To lift it up, you basically put your hand into these handles right here and lift the whole unit up after you take off the rubber connector. By the way, these PulseRam heads are backward compatible with any CDC LaRue Pulse-Bac vacuum tank. So if you have one of those out there, this head will fit on there as well. This exhaust box here, this diffuser, looks like this right here. And this is set up so that if you wanted to add the HEPA-RAM on there, you just pull this out like this. And there's a HEPA-RAM attachment that sits on the top of this head to further even scrub the already very, very clean air that's there. So this is the PulseRam 29.5-inch tall 14 gauge tank that we have here. The dolly has 5 different handle grips positions on the bottom of the dolly that you can grab it from any position to lift it to dump it. On the inside here, you can see the inlet to the tank is a 3-inch inlet. This will allow you to hook 3-inch hoses on to carry more CFM into the tank. This allows the tank to act as a built-in multi-purpose centrifuge to spin out most of the heavy debris so that it doesn't reach the filters, which will sit far above the inlet. And this tank will hold approximately 200 pounds of dust before it's ready to dump. Dumping this tank is very, very quick and easy, requiring only a couple minutes to dump 200 pounds of dust. Okay, so here is a different feature that the PulseRam has that the Pro 11 from Pulse-Bac and the Pulse-Bac 1250 does not have, which is the ability to, within seconds, add an external air scrubber to the exhaust. Now the filters inside the head already have 3 filters that are 99.97% HEPA filters, rated at 0.3 microns and larger. This filter right here has about 110 square feet. We're not saying square inches, we're saying square feet. This is the equivalent of a 10-foot by 11-foot room folded into these pleats right here. And this is medical grade HEPA material. So the filters on the inside are just shy of 10 square feet each. So internally there's almost 30 square feet of HEPA material. Over here there's 110. And this will allow you to work in clean rooms, hospitals, convalescent centers, any place that requires ultra clean air. And if you notice, this is built vertically, so the stance is narrow. It's got a nice wide dolly, about 26 inches wide approximately on the bottom. You can go pretty much through any doorway that you want and do your work. Now, there's a reverse Venturi effect when the air comes out of the motor, it is moving very, very swiftly. As soon as it hits this elbow, it smoothly widens to around this 4-inch material, comes up and through here, which drastically slows down the speed of the air coming up through here and then into the filter. So when the air diffuses out of here, you can barely feel the air coming out because there's literally so many square feet of HEPA material through here to slow it down. So it acts like a giant muffler as well. It doesn't reduce CFM all that much. We have tried it out on our jobs under adverse grinding conditions, and this vacuum in this configuration can completely keep up with grinding thin set or anything like that that requires a lot of CFM. So I'll turn this on for you so you can see what it sounds like. You can probably hear the valves popping on the inside there. If you'll give me a second here, I'm going to grab a piece of paper and show you how little this moves. So you can kind of see it like this right here. So I'm going to turn it on. So you can see by the time the air makes its way through and comes out this filter, there's not a lot of air displacement on the outside here that you can feel. This means you could work literally right up next to desks that had papers all over the tops of them. You wouldn't have to risk any exhaust air blowing papers around or doing anything like that. So this would really be set up for you to work inside of some very technical, difficult situations. So that is just as easy as that thing comes off. It also goes on the same way. If you'll notice, this part right here has got a twist lock in it. So basically you set the filter on top, you line that up with a hole, you turn it about 8 degrees and it goes into the slot and it swings back the other direction and locks in. So it's very easy to put on and off right there. This is what it sounds like when the filter is off of it. So you can tell that there's a significant difference in sound. Obviously, with the PulseRam on it, it cuts the sound down to the point where it's really, really quiet and not very much air comes out of that, at least to disturb the surrounding environment. Over here, there's a considerable amount of air coming through this diffuser, and it is a little bit louder. One other thing to mention, there is a selector switch here set for 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 15. And basically what you can do is you can set how far apart the spacing is from one solenoid to another when they pop. When it's set on 5, when one solenoid pops, 5 seconds will go by and the next one will pop. 5 seconds goes by and the next one will pop. The 5-second and the 7-second mark are for very, very serious dust producing activities, such as grinding thin set and removing saltillo. If you have just general job site conditions, there's not a lot of dust to do, you could easily set this knob up higher and, you know, space out the pulsing appropriately. But under heavy dust producing circumstances, you'd want to be all the way down there on the bottom. Pretty certain Pulse-Bac does not offer anything like this yet for either their Pulse-Bac 1000 series or their Pro series.